Oh, well, okay. Um, I probably need to turn this on. Okay. Well, welcome to chapter 7, sexual problems and solutions. So obviously it's impacts enough people that is a prominent part of our subject matter and a prominent part of research and discussion and work in both the medical and psychological field, right? So sexual problems. I'm gonna start right as usual. I'm gonna pull up the PowerPoints, and we will look at chapter 7 real quick. Okay. I can't. This thing is drives me crazy. All right. I've got to figure out how to move this, obviously. That's not what I wanted to do. All right, so here we are, sexual problems and solutions. Sorry, you think I would be an expert at this by now, but obviously it's just not true. So, of course, like every chapter, we have some learning objectives. And this image as well, to me, this image demonstrates how these issues keep us separated, right? This looks like a couple that can't break through whatever it is between them, represented by a plastic sheet at this point, right? So how do we organize and define sexual disorders, causes, sources, and how do we work on them? And then we're not going to get into the specifics, I mean, very much, but you can read all about that, right, in the video here. So prior to 1960, of course, Masters and Johnson and all of that, there was very little information, valid information about this, right? There was just, like it says, a quagmire of myths, a bunch of wives' tales, anecdotal information, etc., right? Demonic possession and Freud, of course, right? You know, the Oedipus complex, etc. So you have issues with your mother or your father or your parenting on some point, right? They didn't baby you right, they didn't breastfeed, you know, all kinds of stuff. And obviously Masters and Johnson helped us get some more valid information on here. So this is the DSM. This is our Bible. This is our Bible in my world. When I was in practice, right? I was and treated people with sexual dysfunctions and etc. Right? What that means. So this is how we get a diagnosis. This is on the psychological side, right? Of course, there is the medical side too. So, you know, it's not just all psychological problems. There's a medical component too, and some issues are totally medical. All right. So how do we define it? This is how we define it. So there's actually like 40 pages of sexual dysfunctions and the criteria that you need to meet to be diagnosed, right? It's all in here in my little handbook, okay? Here is the list, categories of sexual dysfunctions, the main indication, what this means, right? So you can look at this table is in the book. As I said, there's neurological, hormonal, right? Blood flow, drugs, and SSRIs are antidepressants. And often medications for depression, etc., mental health meds interfere with your ability to function normally, the way you normally did sexually, and reduces your sex drive also. Can, right? So though alcohol may lead to sex, it doesn't help improve sex when you actually have it, right? Necessarily, right? So what are we talking about, right? So people are afraid of sex mostly because they don't know what the hell they're doing or what they're talking about, right? As we said all along, if you knew how to please people, if you know the physiology, if you understand that intercourse may not be the actual goal, but actually to focus on the sensations, and orgasm and pleasure and physical pleasure and emotional pleasure is the goal, right? Rather than just intercourse. Yeah. Anyway, we have a lot of reasons why people have sexual disorders, right? Stress, guilt, like I said, fear, biggest one, anxiety, performance anxiety, etc. Right? Mostly our lives, like, people work long hours, they got family issues, they got money issues, they're too stressed out to relax and have sex and have fun. Inside your relationship, of course, I don't know what loss of trust is on top here, but poor communication is certainly a problem. The conflicting sexual expectations, we talked about this before, like how have you, when you were choosing your mate or a long-time relationship, did you have any discussions about what your expectations were sexually and how that works, right? Here's the circle of relationships, according to that, what we just saw. So all of these or any of these can contribute to an unsatisfied sex life, and then the loss of sexual intimacy. So here's some issues, right? So the problems come from our expectations, the pressures of society, the pressures of our culture, the pressures from outside. To performance anxiety is a huge issue, right? All of these things. Can I try this? With fear of experimentation, the lack of communication of my partners about to experimentation, all of these things, right? But there are, just like everything else, you can work through this stuff if you're willing to put in the work and do the work. Sex therapy is a huge business, I guess, if you want to say, but it's certainly a huge part of private practice in the therapy world. Anyway, so here's some, like I said, so sensate focused, right? How do you sensually touch people and do things besides intercourse, right? Masturbation, mutual masturbation, or called directed masturbation. And self-discovery. What do you know? Do you know where to be touched to get the most pleasure for yourself, or your own self? Like, do you know what you even like? So here's some specific problems: hypoactive sexual desire, right? And it's in here, right? A little manic, right? We have erectile dysfunction disorders. Viagra has been on the market forever. Of course, not all of it is about physical, some of it is mental, right? So oftentimes there's a two-pronged approach to working on sexual disorders. All right, female sexual arousal disorder, lack of arousal for women. So premature ejaculation, these are all the, different things that happen, causes, you can read this, right? Orgasm disorders among females, painful sex, problems physically that cause pain to be discomfort, uncomfortable, and at best, and painful at worst. Different things that contribute to that. So we've learned a lot more, and right, reverse the current trend to medicalize things, because a lot of it is psychological, and you can work on it without medication. And of course, in America, we typically want a pill to fix everything. We don't want to do the work that it takes to make ourselves emotionally better. But it's really, it's a debate, and it's your own choice on how you want to go about problems, solving your issues. But medication versus therapy, combined therapy and medication approaches are all different ways to look at things. The new woman sexually, the table's in the book. And that really brings us to the end of chapter 7. Of course, I am not a big promoter of medications, right? I necessarily, when they're necessary, they're necessary. But too often we look to medication, as I said, as the we look at medication as the cure-all, and not willing to do the work. When you're looking in a book like this, we're talking about psychological disorders that require therapy on some level. So, like I said, everybody has their own choice. Everybody goes about their own way. But you need to know that this is not something to be ashamed of. This is just like any other disorder. I get it. Right? It's in the book about the mental health issues and psychosis. It's on the same book as psychosis, but it's not, at the same level. So at any rate, just something to be aware of, and hopefully if you are having any of these issues or know somebody is, you can direct them to do something different. All right, chapter 8 is next.